Good evening. We're coming to you guys on a Thursday night to talk a little bit Panthers football. We're coming off week 2 of preseason, Carolina and the Jets. We'll get into that in a little bit. I did want to share, I think you guys have probably seen by now on Twitter. But first, I got to talk. Bryson, how you doing? Let's start with that.
You gonna leave me hanging or what? I see you're going suns out, guns out today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm good, man. Just excited to continue to talk about football. Just so ready for the regular season to start, and feels like it's taken forever, but we're getting there slowly.
Yeah, I'm excited. What are you drinking tonight? I think I've had this on here. I'm still working through this. Pacifico.
Yeah.
So I'm drinking that tonight.
I'm drinking your favorite. We got some Coors Light. The mountains are blue, baby. Nothing fancy, unfortunately. Just drinking what I got in my fridge.
I don't know if it's a hot take or not, but worst beer on the planet right there.
Yeah, that's a very hot take. That's completely wrong.
Oh, shit. Well, we got some kind of what I teased just a little bit ago. We had posted something kind of ominous on Twitter last night. I'll just share that with you guys here once I can figure out my graphics. But yeah, we got a big announcement coming next week. You can read into this what you will. We will obviously share that, but it's going to be some exciting news, and we're both very excited for this next venture, and it should be a good one. So stay tuned for that, but it'll be coming, and we got a really big show as well next week with some panel guests. So look forward to that on Wednesday. But yeah, just stay tuned, and we'll spread the news next week. But let's talk preseason. So the starters again didn't play. No real surprise. I know I mentioned it last week. I don't know where you fell in it, that I didn't really think they were going to play just based off of the joint practices and how they looked offensively last week. And then, starters came out for warmups, and then obviously, the second, third, fourth string guys went out there and played. But just your general observations, Bryson, of, this last weekend's preseason game.
Yeah, I'll start on the offense. I thought to start off with, Jonathan Mingo looked really good. He had that end around that I think that got called back. Actually, it wasn't even an end around. I think he caught a screen and then took it, kind of turned it around to the other side of the field. That got called back because of the penalty, I believe. But he looked good in open space. I think that's, one of Mingo's specialties is that yards after catchability. And unfortunately, he didn't get to be put on display too much last season. But I'm hoping, this offense incorporates it more moving forward. So I was impressed with Mingo. The little bit of action that we did get from him. Again, they were playing with Plummer at quarterback for most of the game. Luton got in at the end, but and I actually didn't get to catch the end of the game. I was at a party and was very drunk towards the end of the game, so I unfortunately didn't. Yeah, I unfortunately didn't get to get that far into it, but I did get to catch most of it, I think, into the third quarter. So yeah, I was excited about Mingo, excited about your boy Jatavion Sanders. He looked really good in the opportunities that he had catching the ball and yards after catch as well. I was really disappointed to see Dylan Johnson cut after he's, scored the only touchdown since Christmas Eve.
Laid it out on the line, man.
And it was like the next day he was cut, which was crazy. But yeah, I thought he had a really good game and maybe put some film out there for other teams to potentially take a look at him. But on offense, that's pretty much who I wanted to highlight, and I'll let you jump in with some of the people that you think played well.
Yeah, first off, I just want to talk about going to the game.
Yeah, that's right. You were there. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I went. And shout out to Matt, our buddy that we met when we went to the draft in Kansas City.
What a dude.
Last year. Guy is solid dude. Really ready for him to move back here already.
Yeah.
Get some couple rounds of golf in and go to some of the games with him. He's come down a couple times. He came last year, I think, for the season opener. You guys have probably seen some of the pictures online. I can't remember I don't know if you know his Twitter handle, but if you don't follow him, he's worth a follow. But he ended up giving me his seat he's like in the end zone, 230 something. I'm way up in my seats. But yeah, I sat in his, and it was a pretty nice view, kind of that, you can see kind of everything on the field because you're most of the time when they're going away from you can kind of see, how they line up both offensively and defensively, which is really nice. But yeah, just overall, I was pleased with everything. Hung out at the doghouse, had some drinks there before the game, and then went over. And I do want to shout out, because I was tweeting about it. I want to shout out the DJ. Like, the music has definitely changed in this stadium. I know there was a lot of gripe around that, and some of the music selection they played, there was a lot more rap, a lot more pop during the game, but they've eliminated some of that stuff, and I think I definitely noticed it. There was no doubt about it. And they also got this like new, like, I don't know if they showed it on TV, but this like inflatable mascot that like break dances. They did it in like the third quarter. It kind of looked creepy. I don't know. I got a weird vibe from the damn thing. There's not a person in it, I don't think, but it's just like this like inflatable robotic thing that can like break dance and shit. It was weird. But anyway, going to the actual game itself. I know I sent out some tweets early on. It was kind of based off of our conversation last week we had with JJ Hardy, but people are going to call it the conspiracy, whatever you want. But I thrown something out there, them not playing kind of reeked of David Tepper and just his antics over the years. And I get it. It's probably not him, but I just find it funny that people continually defend this man when I cannot put anything past him. So I don't get why people continue to go down that path of, this guy is, he's changed since he threw the drink. He's the same guy who ripped off a hat from, a restaurant, and, we can go on and on about him, but I just wanted to throw that out there. And because there was some things I think you had mentioned, and I looked this up. I ended up not tweeting it out because I didn't want to go down the rabbit hole of this, but Pete Carroll valued preseason, and Dave Canales takes a lot from Pete Carroll. He came into the NFL with that guy, and Pete Carroll has been on the record saying the preseason is very important. And if you look back at all the preseason games these last couple of years, the starters have played in a lot of those games. So I don't know, it just seemed odd. But again, I get the health stuff, and we're going to put it to bed. It is what it is. Canales didn't want to, put guys out there that weren't with starters, and didn't want to get Bryce hurt or whatever the case is. And we'll move from it. And, they're going to be playing this weekend, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. But just wanted to address that because I wasn't going to ignore the tweet I put out. But the game itself, offensively, I thought, I was worried about Plummer. We've talked about it last week with him. I tweeted, I'm ready for the air mails all night. Like, I just, I don't have a lot of confidence in the guy. I think he's a pretty shitty quarterback. But he went out there, he threw, he had some decent throws. I still thought Luton was better. I was hoping they would kind of split, half and half, but it sounds like Luton was dealing with some injury there, and has already been, waived. But I thought he had some better throws this game and gave some guys chances. We got to see Terrace Marshall make a couple plays, which was nice in game. We know he's, showed out in training camp, but he finally got some things going in game. Mingo had some, a couple grabs. You mentioned Tavion Sanders. I thought he had more moments in this game compared to the first one. I would have liked to see more in that first preseason game, but he definitely took advantage this past week, which was nice to see. And I think he kind of powered over a guy in one of his catches. Actually, I wish he would have stayed up a little bit more, but he definitely showed the power he's got. He's a big dude. He's a big target, which is nice to see. I also thought Mike Boone played and had he had some decent carries in there. He didn't have a lot of room to work, but I thought he made, the most of it from what I could tell. And then you mentioned Dylan Johnson. I thought Dylan Johnson, had a good game towards the end. He put it all on the field. If you didn't see the end, I mean, he barely, when he got into the end zone, he was dead. Like, he would lay it on the ground and would not move for a bit. The guy was tired. He was annoyed that he didn't get to celebrate, but the guy was like exhausted. He ran. He had more yards in that drive than the team did the entire game. Like, so he put it all out on the line, and then he got cut after in a pretty deep, running
Tough
back room.
business.
Yeah, I mean it is, but that's one of the rooms that is a little bit deeper with them drafting Jonathan Brooks and waiting for him to come back from injury. But I thought he had a solid game as well. I thought the O-line played a little bit better in this one compared to the last game. But overall, I thought offensively, it was stagnant. And again, it's your depth players, so you're seeing what the depth has, and we've talked about it for weeks now. There's not a ton of depth on this team across the board. There just isn't. So, that kind of shows, when some of these guys start going down in season, because it's going to happen. You don't want it to, but it's going to happen. Some of these guys are going to get, it's going to be a plug and play type situation. And, that's something that, Carolina lacks this year, and hopefully they can build on that moving forward. I don't want to talk too much, so I'll let you go, but it's just offensively things need to pick up because, we're going into the second preseason, and in the last minute is when they scored their first touchdown. So, I mean, you'd like to see some more movement. Again, Andy Dalton hasn't played yet. We'll talk about that later. I think that would have helped.
Yeah,
and I
for sure.
Plummer has kind of hurt this, the opportunities for some of these guys to get the ball because he hasn't been able to hit on some of these throws. So I think that's kind of hurt some development in games because you got a guy you can't, hit his targets, and these guys aren't getting the opportunities they deserve. So I hope that kind of shows out in this last game. But defensively, what did you see in this one?
Yeah, I think the brightest spot of the game was Trevin Wallace for sure. He flashed all game, and sideline to sideline, making tackles, identifying plays quickly, getting to a spot. I thought he was fantastic, and I think that pick from Dan Morgan is looking more and more better, for lack of words, as we get closer to the season. I think both of us were kind of defending the pick a little bit, saying, it's Dan Morgan, leading tackler in Super Bowl history, former linebacker in the NFL that's, got his pedigree that he does. Let's, be patient and see if he's identified a linebacker in the draft that others weren't as high on, draft stock wise. So it looks like he has up to this point. It's preseason. I understand that, and he's playing against second and third stringers, but he's looked good. And I was very impressed with him in that game. Another guy that played well that I thought was Jamie Robinson. He's kind of on the outside looking in my opinion, to make this 53-man roster. And he went out there and played with tenacity, was not afraid to hit anybody, and made his presence known on that defense all game. So that was impressive to see from Jamie Robinson. And maybe it earns him a spot, maybe it doesn't, or maybe it earns him, a practice squad spot at the very least with us. So that was good to see from him. And then another guy that I thought played well was Claude Charles, the linebacker. Another linebacker other than Trevin Wallace, I thought played really well. I think he ended up getting 6 total tackles, 4 solos. Another guy that was kind of all over the field, getting to a spot quickly, identifying plays. Thought that linebacker group played well as a whole overall in that game, so was pleasantly surprised with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of reiterate some of that, and I just want to let folks know because I didn't really mention it off the top. We are going to have our 53-man predictions this week. I like to do it towards the tail end because it gives us a little bit better idea. I get it. Maybe we should have done it off the jump from the start, but I feel like that's just throwing darts at a wall and hoping they stick. This kind of gives us a better idea. We got to see some of the practices, both of us got to see some games. Who do we think should make the roster type situation? So we'll have that a little later on. But yeah, I thought DJ Johnson had a couple nice plays. I don't say that very often. You might want to record this little bit, but he did make some decent plays in the run game specifically, I thought.
Yep.
I thought TJ Smith was flying around. I believe he had his second sack. I thought
Yep.
he had his second sack in preseason, which, this is kind of a guy that no one really talked about pre-training camp, and then kind of just rose up, and you saw that depth chart come out and you're like, wait, this guy's, number 2 in the lineup here at edge, or I mean at the end. And then, you start to see his name a little bit more and people start mentioning his name more often. So yeah, he's been a pleasant surprise. No one, really has talked about him that I know of pre-training camp. And, he's been a bright spot for this team. So I thought he had, some decent plays. I'm just trying to look through some of my tweets because I was at the game. I tried to tweet out when I thought guys were making plays. I agree with you, Trevin Wallace. I'll be the first to say you must have misheard me. I'll be honest. I thought maybe he'd be a reach. I did. I think I said that when they drafted him. Stupidly, to be honest with you, I'll admit that because, Dan Morgan was a pretty damn good linebacker, and I feel like he knows that position pretty well. So that should have been pretty obvious from the jump. But, he has really showed up and has played well. Now, we need to see it, obviously, in a game. I don't want to get too excited about it because we've only seen it in preseason against, backups and stuff. He did make a pick on Aaron Rodgers. But he has really, showed out. And I think that kind of helped them a little bit easier. And we'll talk about the trade later on of getting rid of Michael Barrett. I think that kind of eased that a little bit. And, they got to see really what they had in Wallace. And, he got a pretty good endorsement. If you saw the draft confidential from a all-star and Pro Bowl, all pro linebacker, I can't think of the guy's name. I think he was with the Chargers, who said that was his favorite linebacker in the draft and ended up calling or texting Dan Morgan about it. So, yeah, I mean, that's awesome. We're starting to see some of these guys. Again, it's preseason, so I want to temper expectations because I know we all get excited all the time, but to see these late round guys show up, I mean, we're not used to that around here. We just are
that's something new.
Yeah. So round 3, round 4, round 5 guys, Jai Smith Wade, I thought he played he was playing outside, something he's more comfortable with in college. And, they've been trying to work him in as nickel, but he played a little bit more outside with the Lamar Jackson injury and them getting rid of him. And, he had some nice plays in there. I thought Jameson had a nice pass breakup in one of the downs. I don't remember what point of the game. It was on a 3rd down, and he had some really nice. I said, seatbelt coverage, just locked the guy up. I thought he had made a really nice play, and I thought Boodle had a nice pass breakup in the game. And then we can't forget about Damani Richardson. He had a pick late in the game. 3 picks in a couple of days, in a matter of days. He had a couple against Bryce, and then, he makes a play in that game. So just a guy who's, quote unquote, I don't want to say ball hawk, but, he's found the knack. Like, he's got a knack for finding the ball. So I thought that was really good. Special teams wise, I thought we sucked. I really did. Like, I thought our kickoff team coverage, they gave up a couple big runs. There was one that set them up like at the 30 or 40-yard line in Carolina's zone, which was not ideal at all. And Eddie had a really horrible attempt at a tackle on a kickoff. It was pathetic. It looked like me out there trying to tackle a guy. And there was just a couple returns that they had, and I can't remember exactly our returns, but I just thought special teams kind of lacked. I thought, the Jets did a nice job with that. I know Eddie made, I want to say one field goal maybe in the entire game. 1 or 2 he made. I can't remember exactly, but I just thought our kickoff coverage kind of sucked in that game, and something they're going to need to clean out because that is a whole new element this year, and it's a different beast because not everyone it's new. It's something not everyone's used to, and it's, they're totally changing the way that has been, performed, and the style of it and the coverage itself and the way guys are lined up since NFL existed. So it's a whole new ball game, and I think that it will worry me going into the season if they looked like they did this past week, because it was their coverage team sucked on kickoff. So that kind of annoyed the hell out of me a little bit. But
Eddie made
anything
two.
else that kind of stuck out to you?
Eddie made 2 with a long of 35 yards, for a programming note.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that was one thing I remember tweeting it out, and I'm like, damn, like they're giving up. I mean, seriously, there was a return that, Jets were sitting at like the Panthers, I think it was like 35-yard line for one of the returns. I'm like, come on, like this shit can't happen. But again, starters aren't out there. I get that, but I don't always want to use that excuse either, because these guys, some of these younger guys are the ones that are on special teams, so they need to be making plays. So, but yeah, you said Jamie Robinson. I thought he had a heck of a game too.
Yeah.
I didn't think he had a stellar performance in the first preseason game, and I thought he had a nice bounce back, flying all around. I think he had the most tackles on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was there, and he adds some value on special teams. He's out there in special teams coverage too. So, that's something to keep in mind. Bland, appreciate you in the comments. Again, folks, if you're watching, hit us up in the comments. Any questions you got, we'll try to answer them too as we go along here. But Bryson, anything else from the game itself with the Jets that, came to mind?
No, nothing I can think of. I need to go back and rewatch it. I know that because I was in and out of consciousness. So yeah, just going back and rewatching it is probably my only other note about it.
I do want to I don't mean to harp on this because the guy's off the team and he's hurt now, but I really wish we'd have seen more of Luton. I don't agree with that coaching decision. And maybe they knew he was hurt, so maybe that's why he wasn't playing in his comfortability with the playbook. But I think it seemed clear that Luton provided a spark every time he came in both games.
Yeah.
And for only him to play a couple series, I didn't understand that at all. And then my other gripe was, again, it was a little bit different situation, but I've noticed Canales hasn't called a lot of timeouts in both games. And it was weird to me that no one mentioned it at the end of the game. And I get it because it was kind of, end of the preseason and they ended up scoring anyway. But that last series, if they were managing it like an actual game, I would have liked him to, call timeouts, them scoring, and then, try an onside kick, like try to attempt like you're trying to win the game. And it was more like he was running out the clock and let's score right at the end. But I would just like to have seen that a little bit more, because I think that gives those younger guys some reps in those situations. But they just kept running it. And honestly, they almost didn't. I mean, that play at the play that ended the game, they almost didn't get the ball before the time expired. And Canales had 3 timeouts sitting in his back pocket and never called one. So that was a little odd to me, the way that was set up, because if they would have stuffed the Panthers on that play, game's over with. They wouldn't have scored. And I mean, it took all of Dylan Johnson to get in that end zone. If you didn't see the play, I mean, he had to break a tackle and spin around a guy as he rolled into the end zone. I mean, it was a tough run. I mean, it was all of him on that one. So that was I was a little, I don't know. I don't know. He hasn't used many of those timeouts. So just something to kind of monitor as we go along here, because I thought it was strange that we didn't call any there at the end, because they were running the ball down their throats, and maybe that was kind of keep the defense on the field, let's wear them down. Maybe that was the plan. But I just thought that was a little odd. So maybe I'm reading into it too much. But enough about the actual game itself. Let's talk a little bit before we get into our 53-man prediction. Let's talk about the trade that was made today. And that was, the Panthers, getting rid of, were you a little bit surprised? I thought, and I understand that room is somewhat deep, that linebacker group is what they believe. But to get rid of a draft pick already, I know it was a late round pick. I believe it was a 7th rounder, Michael Barrett from Michigan, the linebacker. But they go out and get rid of him for Michael Jackson, folks. Just beat it. guy from Seattle, and a tall corner. What was your reaction when you saw the trade, Bryson?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised, definitely. Michael Barrett had a very good game, and he's played well in the preseason overall, I think. So it was interesting. I think the connection with Michael Barrett and Mike Macdonald in Seattle is clear. I think Mike Macdonald was his DC for a year or so and at Michigan. So, that connection there probably is what drew the interest of the Seahawks at least. So Carolina added to a room that needed it really bad in depth. They like you said, he's a 6'1" corner. I got some stats for him. In 2022, he played 1,147 snaps. So he played most of his playing time was in 2022 when he had a 60.2 overall PFF grade, which is actually decent for a corner. But in 23, he played 472 snaps, had a 77 overall PFF grade, which is really good. He had 85 targets with 53 receptions and allowed 593 yards and 3 touchdowns. He got an interception and he had 9 pass breakups. So he played well. He seems like he was pretty well liked in Seattle. I think he's going to be the number 2 corner, especially with Dane Jackson being out for a period of time. Sounds like it's going to be a decent amount of time. Jackson comes in right away and takes over that cornerback 2 spot and adds some much needed depth to that room. So I liked it. It sounded like a guy that Seattle was going to be moving on from, really trying to trade him or potentially cut him. And, the Panthers got him for a 7th round pick. So I'm not too upset about it. You're going to get potentially a starter. So for the cost of a 7th round draft pick. And who knows how much playing time Michael Barrett would have got this year, probably primarily a special teamer. But I think Barrett's going to be a good player moving forward in this league because I think he's got the pedigree and the will and the drive to be a good linebacker in this league. And I was a fan of the pick, but again, you're adding to a room that needs it desperately with the injuries they've suffered, and we know the history with the number 1 corner in that room. So again, surprised, yes, but happy about the addition overall.
Yeah, I was just looking, you're getting a guy who's got starter reps.
Yep.
And a lot of them, which is very beneficial in a room that just lost Dane Jackson, who was supposed to be the number 2. I mean, that was their vision. That was pretty clear. Dan Morgan, a guy he, beat the drum for in Buffalo, and then, gets him in the offseason, and then he goes down. He's supposed to be out 6 weeks. So it's Dan acting on something. They tried, they took a swing at Stephon Gilmore, didn't get him. Minnesota gave him more money, it sounded like. So he misses on that. All right, let's go out and get a guy who's got, starter reps and can come in, a big, lengthy corner. And, it looks like I think he's slated as the 2. Like, I don't know. And I think, Boodle and some of these other guys and Jameson have, has shown up and made strides, but you don't know what you're getting when you see those guys, starting every single, most plays on defense against, some of the top receivers in the league. So I can't hate the move. We'll see what Michael Barrett does. I do think he is going to be a solid player, and, McDonald is going to get the most out of him, just like he did at Michigan with him. So yep. I think it's kind of a win-win for both teams. And what's crazy about it, I got to shout out this guy because he's the one that tweeted. I'm not going to steal it from him. Julian Council, I think he's a sports reporter at WCNC in Charlotte. He tweeted this out. Dan Morgan traded Dante Jackson for which was a guy we were going to cut. Panthers were going to cut him for Deontay Johnson and a 7th round pick. Then they took the 7th round pick, drafted Michael Barrett, and then traded it for Michael Jackson. So they got a starting corner and a starting wide receiver for Dante Jackson.
Yeah.
So good work for Dan Morgan, and shout out to Julian Council for pointing that out, because that's a good way to look at it. Just trying to connect all the dots. I'm picturing that like GIF where the guy's like in the crime where he's trying to pinpoint all the little things. And if you haven't seen on Twitter, I like the GIFs. So yeah, I mean, I like that. I think that's a good way to put it. And we'll see, what Michael Jackson, can be for this team. And Carolina is a couple of guys away from the Jackson 5. So another
Yeah, no
one I
kidding.
took from Twitter. I'm not going to take credit for that, but we've had all the Jacksons this year. Seriously. So, but hey, I appreciate it. Oh, look at that. We got some people in the chat here. So Mike Hollinger, he believes this is a pretty good trade, and he hopes, it works out and we get some depth with this cornerback room. So Mike, I appreciate you commenting. And then Jack, it's my buddy from college. Me with the gun show. I appreciate it, Jack. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate the support. But yeah, I think the trade was a good one, and Carolina finally addresses that cornerback need that we had. So enough about that. We want to get to the 53, or we want to talk Buffalo? I'll leave that up to you. We can go to the 53. We can talk Buffalo.
Let's do the 53. End with Buffalo.
All right, let's go to the 53. So Bryson and I, this is our predictions. What's up?
I said, let me crack a beer real quick.
Oh, okay.
Get ready for this.
Bryson and I both are making predictions for the 53-man roster. He did have to give me his roster before because I had to make some graphics for it, but I kept mine the way it was. Obviously, he kept the way it was. And we'll see how we were similar on a couple things, some obvious ones, of course. But let's take a look at both of these for a second here. So let's start with the quarterbacks. And I think this is pretty obvious. And you'll see I kind of color-coded these. When we were both the same, I kept the colors white. And you can see that kind of displayed on the screen, and then kind of try to break them up with color coordination just so you guys could kind of see the difference between the two. But, yeah, I think this is pretty obvious. I don't think we can – I don't think they take 3 QBs. I don't think Jack Plummer is a 3 QB in this league. Maybe I'd be shocked if he's a practice squad guy, but he knows the offense. I wouldn't want this guy as a backup. I don't. I have no hope. I don't mean to be an ass. He hasn't played very well at all. So
yeah, no, you're not being an ass. You're just being realistic, man. He's not been good. He's not worth a roster spot. So you keep 2 quarterbacks because of that. Just where we're at right now. So yeah, we're both on the same page. I haven't seen yours yet. You've seen mine. So I'm glad that we agree on this one.
Yeah, let's go to the running backs, and this is where it differs. So, Bryson, talk about your list.
Yeah, so I'm keeping 4. Jonathan Brooks, could potentially start the season on IR, like you said, and come off. I think he has to start 4 weeks at least. I'm hoping that he doesn't start the season there, but we'll see. Of course, the next 3: Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, Raheem Blackshear. I think Blackshear brings. First of all, I think he's a good running back. I think he hasn't had much opportunity on this team, and maybe eventually he will, but it's a pretty deep room, as you can see. So don't think he's going to get a whole lot this year, but he brings the aspect of kick return, and I think he's a very good kick returner, and I believe he was listed as the starter on the initial depth chart on kick return. So I think last year he was top 5 in the league in kick return average. So I think him adding that as well as a potential, running back fill-in if one of the top guys get injured, then I think he's a valuable asset to this team. And then, of course, Chuba will be running back 1 until Brooks comes back. I think Brooks takes it over eventually. And then Miles Sanders, hopefully he has that bounce back year, man. He's looked really good in training camp. I think we both have noticed that. And, he deserves a little grace for last year like everybody else did on this team with that coaching staff here and the lack of, I guess, just basic knowledge about football, it appeared, or just Reich being stuck in his ways and not allowing other people to have say in what was going on. So I think they keep 4, and those are the 4 that I think they keep.
Yeah, I sadly think Brooks starts 4 games IR, and that's what I noted with the star there at the bottom. I think I've seen some, there's possibilities he doesn't play until October, and that would put him around the 4-game mark. Would I like to see him sooner? Yeah, but you might as well get him healthy. I think Chuba's a viable back until then. He proved that last year.
Yeah.
and has, been playing well in training camp this year. And I think he's going to take another step with this, run heavy offense that Canales wants to run. And, some of those big dudes up front in Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. So I think he can hold the load until he comes back. I think Miles Sanders looks better than he did last year. Raheem Blackshear is the toss-up, and I mentioned this last week. I would not be shocked if he's cut. I wouldn't be. And I know he's been among those starters, so, you might call me crazy on that, but he hasn't got a lot of touches in the backfield. He's only been a returner. And does, Carolina say we keep ISM only and use some of these other guys and he's the sole returner? Do they go that route? So, and I really like Mike Boone. I think he's added some value. I think he's had some good runs in preseason and in practice that I've been to. And then I also think just with them cutting Dylan Johnson after what he did, I'm like, okay, they clearly think, somewhat of Mike Boone if they didn't cut him instead of Dylan Johnson, just the way the guy performed, Johnson, this past week.
Yeah.
So I do think if Brooks is out to start the year, I think Mike Boone is the fourth guy in this rotation until he's taken off of IR. So that's kind of where I ranked it. Again, we'll see if Brooks isn't on IR to start the year. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Boone over Blackshear. That's kind of just my bold prediction for this room. Let's go to wide receivers here. And we differ on this one. I guess I'll start and then we can go to you. I'm very similar to you. If they kept 7, that was my cat. If they kept 7, I would say it's David Moore. I think he makes the team. But I don't think they do. I think they keep 6, and I think David Moore goes to practice squad. So I think the 4 obvious are Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, Jonathan Mingo. And I spelled Jonathan Mingo. That's my bad. I have one spelling on your side and one on yours is the right. It's with an A. And then Terrace Marshall Jr., Mike K brought up, Charlotte Observer. Check him out. If you guys don't subscribe to him, I'm going to shout him out. It's $1 or $2 to subscribe to the Charlotte Observer. It's worth it. Mike puts out great content. He kind of, flirted at the idea, could Carolina maybe trade him away before the season, just based off of his stock and how he's played in training camp. So that's something to keep in mind. I know, Ricky had mentioned it on Twitter today. He posted something which I wanted to kind of bring up to you, Bryson, while we're on the wide receiver conversation is, it was rumored maybe that Buffalo would be in consideration for TMJ. Would you take a trade for, and I can't remember the exact, let's see if I can find it here.
It was an edge rusher, I believe, right?
Yes, from Buffalo, and it was their 5th round draft pick, Javon Solomon. He's a rookie edge rusher. I mean, I'm always open to upgrading the edge room, and I do think Terrace Marshall Jr. has always showed up in training camp, but when the lights come on, it doesn't come to fruition. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. And then you'd keep ISM and David Moore, and you'd still have 6 wide receivers, and that would be your unit. So I definitely am open to it. I do think, there needs to be depth there, especially with Wanham. We'll get into defense here in a minute. But, what do you think of that?
I would definitely am open. That's taking from a positional group that you're kind of deep in, per se, for this roster overall. I wouldn't say it's deep NFL-wise, but deep for the Carolina Panthers, and you're adding to a room that's very, very, very weak behind the main guy, Jadeveon Clowney. So I think that would be a smart move. I just don't know if Terrace Marshall garners enough interest to get a trade done at this point. I mean, I know he has the connection with Joe Brady in Buffalo and kind of played pretty well with him when Brady was here. So maybe he does, but I don't know. I just don't really see it happening, especially if that edge rusher is showing out in camp with Buffalo. I think Ricky was pretty high on him throughout the draft process, and apparently he's been doing pretty well in camp. So if it was on the table, yeah, I would absolutely take it. I would, to add to that edge room, because they need it a lot worse than this wide receiver room needs it. So, but as you can see, I think keeping 7 is ideal here. I wouldn't want to risk. I wasn't high on David Moore to start training camp. I think he's been a journeyman wide receiver. He's had some good games throughout his time in the NFL, but I just, I thought he was just kind of a camp body, and he has some history with Canales, of course, but didn't really anticipate him making a lot of noise, and he has, man. Seems like every time Bryce goes deep, he's throwing it to David Moore almost. I mean, and David Moore's made plays, and I think it's shown throughout camp. So I think he's got a connection with Bryce that's evident, and it was coming down for me between ISM and David Moore. And actually, I had ISM cut, but kind of went back through and redid it a little bit.
Yeah, I got to ask you about that, Bryson, because a couple of weeks ago you were out on ISM and you said Coker was making this roster. So what made you change?
Yeah, I think Coker is a very good player, especially being an undrafted player. But ISM just has more of a prominent role. I think if I was making the decision, I would probably go with Coker. But I kind of did this predicting at what Carolina would do with this 53-man roster, not what I would do. So I like Coker's abilities. I think he's a young up and coming talent in this league. Like we talked about a couple weeks ago with the guys from Keep Purring. He had highest vertical in the NFL draft combine, and he's made plays in training camp as well. But he just hasn't had a whole lot of opportunity with Bryce. And of course, in preseason, we see the quarterback play in the game, so just hasn't really had a chance to shine. And I think when Bryce is out there, he's throwing to David Moore, he's throwing to Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette, and not really too much Coker. So, and I think Smith Marset just brings the value at punt return. You move on from Smith Marset, who's going to be the punt return guy, and it sounds like throughout multiple interviews that Canales has given that he's pretty high on Amir Smith Marset and thinks he's a viable deep threat for this team. So I think he makes the roster. I think if it comes down, if they keep 6, then I believe David Moore would be the one that's cut. But I think that this staff and this front office is pretty high on Smith Marset right now.
We had Kyrie in the comments. He said, TMJ showed he can be the X if Deontay's hurt. Trade TMJ and Deontay gets hurt, then Bryce doesn't have weapons. I don't know if I agree with that. I think Terrace Marshall Jr. ain't deciding if Bryce has weapons or not. I mean, I think Adam Thielen proved, he's going to be a target and Legette, and then Mingo's, it seems like he's progressed. We'll see if it, shows up in games, but I don't agree with the last part of that. I do think TMJ has showed that, he can fill in. So I kind of agree with that a little bit, but you take TMJ out the team. I don't agree that the Panthers don't have weapons because, that guy he hasn't proven it in season. He's always had good training camps, always. And you might, last year he didn't get a ton of opportunity. So I get that. But, you have moments where you see TMJ drop balls in training, in a preseason game when he can't be made, you need those guys who kind of are on the fringe or, he's going to make the team. Those guys need to make those plays. So, there's highs and lows to his game as well. So, but yeah, I agree. I think ISM, I just think his return ability it's a lock. I think for that sole reason, he makes the roster. He's shown moments in games. He's also had some drops in games as well in preseason where you can make the argument like, what the hell? And, Coker, I always, from what I've seen in training camp, I always saw Coker was on the outside looking in. He hasn't gotten a ton of opportunities. And when he's in there, he doesn't get thrown the ball. Now that's not, necessarily his fault because again, we're looking at, Jack Plummer, the one throwing a lot of those balls when it's, when they're in practice, but he just hasn't got a ton of opportunity. And you always see ISM, even David Moore getting a ton of reps too. So I don't know, it just seemed like the writing was on the wall and I think they try to stash him on, the practice squad. We'll see if he sticks there. A lot of people don't think it's going to happen. But let's move on. And it's curious, and I wish we kind of prefaced this because you said you kind of are trying to predict how the Panthers. I tried to take the approach of what I was going to do if if this was come down to my decision. I kind of was trying to go back and forth with the way you were looking at it too, but I kind of went with how I thought they should go. So let's move on to tight ends, and I'll start. I'm going with 3. I'm not even going to name.
Shocker.
I'm not even going to name this guy anymore. He's number 80. Get him off my squad. He's terrible. He's hurt when he's in games. I mean, you pull up the stats. Panthers culture, we had him on. I think it was last week. JJ Hardy. He tweeted out something. I should probably pull that up while we're talking here. But he had some interesting stats from Ian Thomas over the years, which this is stats from 2018 on. I'm going to read them. 36 receptions, 330 yards. 2019, 16 receptions, 136. 2020, 20 receptions, 145. 2021, 18 for 188. 2022, 21 for 197. 2023, 5 for 56. Get him off. Bye. Adios. Sayonara. Cut him. I don't care about his blocking ability. I don't care about that. Get him off this team. I don't want to see another tight end screen to him, and I don't want to see him on this roster. I think he sucks. I do. And I've been hearing for years, and honestly, and I've been hearing with the Tommy Tremble stuff too. Tommy Tremble's going to break out this year. Ian Thomas is going to have more catches this year. The tight ends are going to come alive. It doesn't happen. It's a broken record. I don't think highly of either of them, to be totally honest with you, but I do think Tommy Tremble makes the team. I do think they value him. I do think a lot of people still like him. I get that. I just prefer a younger dude, someone we haven't seen, someone who's a big target and has been solid in college at a pretty damn good school and is just new. Let's try something new. This team is in rebuild. You can't deny that. Let's get some of these young guys involved. So I'm all about it. You've seen it for a while now. I like JT Sanders. I think he should be tight end 1. That's just my opinion. I'm tired of all that. The tight ends just haven't shown up the last couple of years. And whether you blame that on coaching, whether you blame it on the player, I blame it on a mixture of both. I kind of lean towards the player with some of these guys. I think Tommy Tremble has potential, but I've also seen plays where he drops the ball when it's thrown his way, and it's like, you shake your damn head and get frustrated at it. But then he makes a really good play and hops over a guy and, hurdles a dude and, makes a really nice play. So it's like give and take. So I really just want to see Sanders let him fly. And I think Jordan Matthews has been a bright spot this entire training camp. But I do not like number 80. There is no secret at all. Me and Bland were going back and forth. I know Bland likes him. I don't like him. I don't want to see another tight end screen. Get him off my team.
We need to get Ian Thomas on the show and let you guys have a conversation. But I will not stand for Tommy Tremble slander. I think he has been a victim of a bad system and a lack of opportunity in Carolina. Dealt with some pretty bad quarterback play since he's been here. I think he has, of course, had some plays where he's dropped the ball, but so has many of the other players on this team. Chuba Hubbard, multiple wide receivers. I think Trimble has flashed when he's had opportunity. I think if he is involved at a high level, I think he will surprise people. So I think Trimble is the tight end 1 right now. I don't think, although I think there were some, I think he might have gotten injured again. There were some speculation that he kind of pulled up on a hammy, and he's not fully healthy right now. Excuse me. So that's concerning a little bit. But as far as number 80, I kept him on the roster because he's like a cockroach, man. You cannot kill him. He won't go away. He's stuck around through all the changes we've had in Carolina over the past 5-6 years, however long it's been.
He's got I don't know David why. Tepper's laptop. He's got to have some.
I don't know what it is, but I mean he's stuck around and coaching staffs like him. Probably because of the blocking ability, but I don't know, man. I think he's going to make the roster. I don't think that there's really. I would say he's probably got a better chance to make the roster than ISM does, in my opinion. In a tight end room that
no way in hell. No way in hell.
I would say he does, unfortunately, because I agree with you, Curtis. I think it's time to move on. I think it's past time to move on from Ian Thomas. I don't want
Cut
to
the
see him on the
cord
field.
already. Like
I don't
it's
want to see
crazy.
a tight end screen to Ian Thomas when you have these other three guys on the roster. But unfortunately, coaching staffs keep including him in their plans. So Jordan Matthews, I agree, has been a big bright spot, and he's typically the first one out at training camp, and tossing the tennis balls on the side of the building where they keep the things that they use for drills, and I like him, and he's flashed a little bit in preseason too, and of course Jatavion Sanders. I think eventually this is going to be your tight end one. I think he's got all the ability in the world. I think he's going to be a really good tight end in this league. But I think Trimble and Sanders battle it out this year. And I don't know, maybe next year moving on, Jatavion Sanders is the clear tight end one. But I think overall it's a decent room. It's definitely not the best in the league. But I think there is some talent there when you talk about Trimble and Sanders and even Jordan Matthews. I think he brings an aspect to the team that really they've lacked for the past since Greg Olsen, really.
All right, Chad. I want to know what Chad thinks. So tell me in chat who you guys think should be tight end one going into week 1. And Bryce, we'll talk about this. Do you think this is going to be the year this tight end room finally breaks out? Because if we can look back at the last couple of years, and I'll just go to Tommy Tremble because I think he had more yards this past season than number 80. But do you think this is the year this is Tommy Tremble the last 3 years. Yards. 180, 174, 194.
How many targets?
And that's what I was going to get to that because I want to see actually some of these top tight ends and what they're getting. But he's average targets 35, 32, 32.
Yeah, I mean he's getting thrown the ball like 3-4 times a game per year, on roughly just math off the top of my head.
So, and I'm let's pull up. What's the guy from Detroit? Laporta. Let's pull up Laporta. Sam Laporta's stats. I didn't want to go top of the chain. Let's just see what Laporta had last year, rookie. So a ton of receptions. I mean, this might be an outlier. I mean, he had 120 targets. Like that's insane. But Carolina they never evaluate in any 3 of these. I mean, we don't know with Canales. We'll see what he does this next year, and maybe let's pull up the Bucs for a minute. Last year stats from the tight end position, and I don't think obviously it was that high. Laporta is a different dude, and I don't think Tampa Bay has a guy like that. But Cade Otton, 67 targets last year for the Bucs. So, I mean, that's pretty solid. And he was the most out of the tight end room. So 67 targets. So let's say that 65 targets. He had 455 yards. Like I think Jatavion Sanders, and I do think, Tremble when healthy, which I don't know if he is. You mentioned the hamstring thing the other day in practice this week. Do I think, Tremble can maybe get to that? I do if he's healthy and he's on the field, but I'd really just like to see this Sanders guy pop off. I really would, because it's just he's a fresh face to the room, and we've been saying it seems like every year we're like, oh, this is the year they're going to break off. Like last year, Frank Reich loves his tight ends. Never used them. He never used Hayden Hurst. I mean, I get it. The guy was concussed for a while there, but even when he was there, they didn't use him a lot. And we all know, tight end was pivotal for Cam Newton. I mean, that was like him and Greg Olsen during the 2014, 2015 years. I mean, that was massive. Like that was a big reason why they got to the Super Bowl. And I get it. You're not going to find a Greg Olsen they don't come around very often, but Carolina needs to start targeting that position. It's a very good safety blanket, especially for a young quarterback. And is mind-boggling that the coaching staffs, the last two coaching staffs could not figure it out. They just could not figure out how to get these guys the ball, and it blows my mind. And 80's a big reason why they couldn't figure it out, because that guy is not a receiving tight end. I'm sorry. He can go away, go send him off. Jacksonville will pick him up just like they did a couple of other guys that we've had. I think they actually picked up the last blocking tight end Carolina had. I can't think of his name off the top of my head right now.
Chris Manhertz?
Yes. The guy that everyone's like, oh, he's one of the greatest blockers in the NFL. Well, I want a pass catching tight end. Get off my team. So hopefully this is a position. I'm literally tired of talking about this position, because every year we hear Tommy Dremel is going to break out. The tight ends are going to get more receptions, and it never happens. Dave Canales, prove us wrong. Let's get the tight ends the ball. I think it'll help out Bryce Young. Let's go to O-line, and then we will take a little break after that, and we'll come back and talk defense. But offensive line, Bryson, we were pretty similar. Why don't you break it down on your side? Would you have it? I think you had 9. I had 10. So run through them.
Yeah. I think last year they kept 9, if I recall correctly, looking at last year's numbers. So, of course, you got the 5 starters at the top there, and then depth. Brady Christensen can play pretty much any position on the line. I think he brings a lot of value there. Jack Anderson is a guy that they literally picked up like last week and then came in and played a really good game. I think he was the highest graded player on the field for Carolina by PFF this past preseason game. So really impressed with him. I think he's a younger guy. I think he's 25 years old and has shown to be better than what we've had in just one preseason game. So I think he ends up making this roster just based off of what he's shown so far. Zavala has looked better this season in training camp and in preseason games, showing improvement, which is what he needed to do from literally having the worst graded PFF season ever last year. I know I keep mentioning PFF, but that's just the kind of barometer that I'm using for this 53-man roster to help me identify some weak spots. So, and then I think the news today was Yosh was activated, so that was good to hear.
Massive news.
Yeah, it's really, really good to hear because he's the Equanu insurance there at left tackle, and Equanu is going to be on a very short leash now that Yosh is healthy, and Yosh has played. He started, I think, in Green Bay and has played pretty well. So he is on his heels, and if Equanu struggles, he is going to be pulled. I don't think that the staff is going to take the continued issues that we saw last year from Equanu again this year and put Bryce at risk with Equanu protecting his blind side. So on mine, I have him keep him 9, and I believe my last cut was Cade Mays. I think
shocked.
Yeah, he's
backup center. You're going to cut your backup center?
Well, I think Christensen's definitely been working at that as well. He's definitely, every time I've been there at training camp with you, and then once with Ricky, I think he's been taking snaps prior to the practice getting started. I think he's kind of groomed a little bit for that position, but I mean, either way you look at it, Cade Mays doesn't have really any experience playing center in college or in the NFL. Christensen doesn't either. So it's not like you're losing that. The only guy that has experience is Andrew Rauen, and he's an undrafted guy that's not going to make the roster. So I think these numbers work out in other areas where I think they can move on from Mays, especially with Jack Anderson and guys like Zavala stepping up.
Yeah, I think Cade Mays is clearly the backup center. He's played there the most when it comes to the number 2 team in snaps. I think there's value there, and I would be shocked if they cut him. And it sounds like, just from listening to Dave the other day about Christensen, he literally said Christensen's a blessing for us. That was his exact quote, because he can play all 5 spots. I think there's versatility there, so I don't see him being cut. And I've always just been a Brady Christensen guy.
Yeah.
And I'm pulling for him to at least make the team. And I do think he adds value there, and he's got starter reps. And so does Cade Mays. I mean, they have starter reps at a lot of these positions because we were in offensive line hell last year and the year before and the year before. Like, so these guys have all these reps. I do think, Zavala, as much as, a lot of people have been down talking about him as being a cut, I think they have value in him. It sounds like he's the backup guard to Damian Lewis. So I don't see him going anywhere. Like you said, Jack Anderson had a really nice game, and I think Yosh is the obvious one that they just brought back. And, he's swing tackle, provides, some backup ability to Icky. And then obviously Brady Christensen. It sounds like Canales wants to narrow down what Christensen does. Canales said, I think on Tuesday, that he can play all 5 spots, but they'd really prefer him to play at a guard and tackle spot and kind of narrow down those 2 positions for him, so he's not all over and he can kind of hone in. Because Canales said, whether it's the left or right side, those are different. And it's funny because you see other coaches, they're like, oh, yeah, it's not that different. Like, they can move over to the right and left. I remember the coaches last year and the year before saying that. It wasn't a big deal. And, Canales is finally pointing out, like, no, this is not it's not as easy as just flipping to the other side. Like, there's some differences and nuances to it. So, I definitely think that
if you remember what Matt Rule said was, or his big thing was like position flexibility and being able to play different positions. And that's what he was looking for. So it's interesting to see the different perspective from Canales.
Yeah. So, we'll see. I think I want to say the Bucks carried. I think the Bucks carry 9 from. I don't remember. I was looking at it the other day, but again, it's all different teams and stuff. But I'd like to look at that sometimes. I think there's a little bit of carryover, and then obviously different. There's differences with the roster. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in about 30 or so seconds to talk about the defense, and then we'll get into a wrap up on this Buffalo game this weekend. So stand by for that. Exciting news, Panther fans. I'm thrilled to announce our partnership with BetStamp and Sign Up Expert, opening up an incredible opportunity for you to join sportsbooks in your area to get the best odds and new user offers. Head over to our dedicated page at signupexpert.com/Panthers to explore a selection of sportsbooks tailored to your region, each with unique offerings. If you're ready to take sports betting to the next level and show some love to Panthers on Tap, I highly recommend signing up for your next sportsbook through our Sign Up Expert link. And I do want to talk about that for a minute. I know we just went through the ad, but we do have college football approaching here. So if you guys are interested in sports betting, it's obviously legalized in March here in North Carolina. If you have any interest in that at all, we are partnering with BetStamp, as you guys have noticed. And we do have a dedicated landing page where you can, it sorts out all the sports books in your area. You can pick the state you live in, and it's right on our landing page. It's signupexpert.com/Panthers. College football starts this weekend. We get a little tease here. Saturday, there's a couple games going on, and then the full-on college football. So if you want to, make any bets with college football, you can do that there. But yeah, just go to signupexpert.com/Panthers. You'll see all the sports books available. You click on the link, sign up, and you can bet away. So we would appreciate all the support with that. But let's get to the defense, Bryson, here. And we'll start with the D-line. And just let me get these graphics sorted. There we go. So we were both the same on this one. And I think that was pretty obvious. This room is pretty solid. They upgraded with A'Shawn Robinson. We talked about TJ Smith before and, his emergence. And then I think Nick Thurman has been solid, in preseason and in training camp this year. And I think this is a really solid unit and a unit that is going to stuff the run this year.
Yeah, agreed. And Nick Thurman was solid last year too, in games. So I think TJ Smith's emergence has been spectacular, something really good to see. The addition, like you said, of A'Shawn Robinson, really going to help stop the run. I think Shot was going to have a bounce back year, hopefully, and kind of bring back some of those shades that we saw of his abilities when he was in New Orleans. And then, of course, Derek Brown, one of the best in the league to do it. So, yeah, this room is pretty set. I'm happy to see that we agree on it.
Well, we're going to move right along. Let's go to outside linebackers. This is where it gets iffy. I'll start I'm holding out hope that Wanham is going to be off IR to start the year. I don't know if that's going to be the case. Guy hasn't really practiced at all. We all know that. But I was kind of rolling the dice with that, hoping he would be. I carry 6 here. I think you carry, it looks five with a couple guys on IR. Obviously, I think Barno will be on IR just coming off of his surgery. But we're pretty similar otherwise, just based off of this. You think, Wano's going to start the year on IR. But I think, overall, as we talked about with the TMJ trade, not a ton of depth here. I am not very confident with DJ Johnson. I want to see it in an actual season going up against starters. This room scares me. Jadeveon Clowney has been a pretty big bright spot for this defense. We've seen it in training camp, him making plays. He's always in the backfield. I don't know how much you can say when it's going against, Ike Ekwonu, but let's see what he does in the season. But he's done it consistently for years, and the guy has made plays. So that has been nice to see. It just worries me about that other side. And we've been talking about that for weeks now. Chason, what is that guy? What has Chason done since he's come in training camp? And, he played a little bit in mandatory, and, said that the Panthers made a really good choice. And then you saw a little bit of him really early on in training camp in practice. I haven't heard nothing about him since.
Yeah.
It's been DJ Johnson and Clowney and Ike Leota in practice, in preseason games showing up. But this Chason guy, who I wasn't a big fan of the signing anyway, just what has he done? So
yeah, I can't defend him. He's been his face should be on a milk carton because he's been missing. But this is probably the most concerning room on this roster, especially after the addition to the cornerback room that we talked about earlier. I think this. We're talking about hoping DJ Johnson takes a major, major, major jump from year one because he was not good last year at all. And I think his specialty is stopping the run. So if you're hoping he develops some pass rushing ability, I think you're taking a major chance. And teams are going to be keying in on Clowney and might not be seeing a lot of pressure, which is going to be bad. So, of course, like you said, Iku Leota had a really good preseason week 1 game. I feel like he got hurt last year and was kind of flashing in training camp too, but the injuries kind of derailed things. So maybe he's a superhero that we haven't seen yet. But it's concerning. DJ Wanham, unfortunately, I don't even think he hasn't even put pads on yet or anything, right, Curtis? I feel like he's pretty far away.
I'm rolling it. I really am rolling the dice. I know Canal is, I don't know who asked. Someone asked this week about injuries. I think it was Person. Updates on Wanham, some of these other guys. And he's like, I don't want to get in any of that right now. I want to keep that close to the chest. It might have been even David Newton who asked it. So I think they're trying to hide some of that. That's what gives me a little bit of hope. Maybe Wanham's closer than we all think, and they're just waiting after preseason because they don't have to really release any of that until they make the 53. So they can kind of hide some of that stuff right now. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm holding out hope. But he hasn't really been out there. So, that's kind of a weight game. And I apologize. I was texting. I had to call out Ricky. I don't know if Ricky's listening to this, but AD Mitchell just scored a touchdown in preseason. The Colts are playing right now on a drag route. That's my guy, Donnie Mitchell. It's going to be special.
Yeah, freaking Anthony Richardson. What he went 7 for 8 for 60 yards and a touchdown on the first drive. Looking really good under Shane Steichen.
I don't mean to talk about the Colts, but I just wanted to throw that out there. That's what I was texting about.
but this I believe it's Luigi Villan. Hell, I just put him on there because we need depth. There's no way this guy makes any roster in the league besides the Panthers 53. Have not heard a single thing about him throughout training camp. And, at this point, we just need somebody can play the position somewhat and just be out there for a body to have 11 people on the field. So that's the only reason I have him on the roster.
Let's go to inside linebackers. And we're the same on this one. I kind of juggled with this a little bit once. I mean, obviously, when the Michael Barrett news dropped, this was a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I did have Barrett on there, and I was struggling with that. I'm like, to where to put him, and that was kind of clear, like this, and that's kind of what they were dealing with. Like there was there was really nowhere to fit him. Like he was probably going to get cut from the way this room shaked out. Shaq Thompson, Josie Jewell, that's your guy. We all know that. Trevin Wallace, like I think his emergence and the way Claudin has played, like you said before, I think he's had a really good camp too. Claudin, he was a guy last year that a lot of people were talking about. I think Mike K actually, shout out to him. I think he was one that mentioned him.
Yep.
Some in training camp that not a lot of people were talking about, and then all of a sudden he was a starter last year. Or he played with Shaq Thompson's injury. But Trevin Wallace has been obviously the bright spot and has really shown up defensively, which has been awesome to see from some of these later round picks. But yeah, I think this room is pretty clean cut out of these four. I'd be shocked if they go 5 here. We'll see. I just think there's other groups here. But any guys out of this room, Bryson, you want to talk about here?
No, I agree. I think it's pretty set, but I could see them keeping a guy like Chandler Wooten for special teams purposes because he has been a pretty good special teamer. Was on the team last year, made the 53. So I think Wooten could be kept potentially over a guy like Luigi Villon or some other depth pieces, maybe a corner. They could keep a guy like that for special team purposes. So I wouldn't be surprised if he makes the roster, but I think these are the four that are pretty locked in for this room.
All right, let's move to corners. And we actually
wow,
we're the same on this, which I'm kind of shocked because I feel like every year this is where we differ. Because usually we're actually pretty similar on all of them. This year it's been different because there has been a lot of unknown with the new regime and a lot of the players gone. But yeah, we agree across the board. Obviously, the Michael Jackson addition today, that's obvious. They traded for him. He's making the team. So we implemented that in. That's clear. That's pretty clear. Troy Hill, I think he's your starter at nickel. And then you got, Deshaun Jameson, DiCaprio Boodle, and then Shaw Smith-Wade, who I feel like has kind of risen a little bit.
Yep.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Smith-Wade by the end of the season is playing over Troy Hill and, in some of these other roles, because I feel like that's kind of what they were envisioning when they drafted him, is to play that nickel spot. And now he's not forced into that number 2 corner spot, which they were kind of working a little bit with him this past preseason game where he was playing on the outside. So, but I do think, as Bryson and I have mentioned, really, I don't know if it's been mini camp on that, guys to watch that maybe some people on the outside thought were going to be cut is Jameson and Boodle. Like we've been mentioning that. I know Bryson has been pushing that a lot too. Like those were 2 guys that this coaching staff valued, and they've made progress, both of them, and have had some highlights. They've had some lowlights too at times, but they've really, I think, stepped up when needed, when guys have went down, whether it was Lamar Jackson or Dane Jackson. So yeah, I think this is another room with the Michael Jackson edition helps. And it's not as, glaring when you look at, like, you get rid of him, and that's what, you're looking at Troy Hill, Jameson, Boodle, and Smith-Wade, and it's a young room. Jackson provides that veteran leadership who started in several games over the past couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously Dane Jackson starts the season on IR. I think it was at least 6 weeks, so it could be longer. When he comes back, maybe they move on from Jameson or a guy like Smith-Wade or Boodle. I don't know. It's going to be a tough decision to who gets cut when Jackson's ready. But, when he comes back, you're looking at a decent cornerback room with Dane Jackson, Michael Jackson, and Troy Hill. with J.C. Horn at the top end of it, I mean, that's not terrible. So I really like the addition of Michael Jackson. It does add a lot of depth. It helps a lot significantly, make that room a little deeper. So yeah, and we've talked about it for a while. The coaching staff is really high on Boodle. You know, we've heard that from multiple people. And Boodle's played well throughout camp and in preseason games. I think Jameson brings a different aspect. Just plays a little bit more aggressive than I think any of these other guys, and he's going to make some home run plays, and he's going to make some not so great plays when he makes a play for a ball and he misses. We've seen that in the preseason. So Jameson brings a little bit of that edge to that room, as well as Horn, of course. So I think this group is pretty set as well. I would love to see Smith Wade get some opportunity because, like you mentioned, he has been rising and played pretty well with some opportunities he's had in training camp and preseason. So maybe he does get some valuable playing time moving forward. You know, this is a guy that really his stock took off at the Senior Bowl with some plays he made there, and ended up getting drafted in the 5th round, I believe it was. So maybe this is a guy that Carolina leans on for the next couple of years in that cornerback room.
I'm not gonna lie, this room still worries me. Like, the Jackson edition is great, but I hate to throw the bad juju out there, but J.C. Horn goes down. This room I'm concerned with. Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
So
you could say that about almost every position group on this team.
Yeah, and that's kind of that we talked about that early on in this episode. Like, depth is a concern across the board at a lot of positions. Like, one guy goes down, you're like, oh shit. It's like the oh shit moment. So, I mean, J.C. Horn, we all know, hasn't played a full season yet in the NFL. So, yeah, I mean, I still wouldn't mind if they added to this room with cuts even, because I think there is concern there if, he does go down. So just something to, keep in mind. Why don't you kick us off here with the safeties?
Wow. Interesting to see here. Okay. So yeah, Xavier Woods, Jordan Fuller, your 2 starters. It sounds like Woods was back today, I believe, or yesterday. Nice to see. Jordan Fuller, the addition in the offseason, I thought was a really good addition. Experience in Evero's system coming over from LA. Really like that. And then the same thing with Nick Scott, experience in Evero's system coming over from LA. And then I have Rudy Ford, the guy that they signed not so long ago. I believe he started some games for Green Bay, played pretty well when he was there. And I think, he's just a more of a veteran presence than the guy you have listed. But I think Ford brings some versatility when it comes to starting history and being in the position before. But I can't deny your guy has he shined. So if again, I kind of predicted this as I feel the Carolina Panthers would act, and I think that's the 4 that they roll with.
Yeah, I'm drinking the Damani Richardson Kool-Aid. I mean, I am. I'm what he's done in practice. Guy's been a little bit of a ball hawk. He finds the ball and he's gotten picks. So I'm gonna roll. I had Jamie Robinson in here at 4, and I flipped it today. And I'm like, fuck it. I'm gonna roll with the guys I think they should keep. And I think he adds some value. And again, it's a deep room. Does he play very often? Probably not, unless someone goes down. And, Xavier Woods has gone down and he's missed games in the past for Carolina. And I think obviously Nick Scott would probably fill in. But, I think Richardson's adds some value. And the guy's been making plays. And you can't discount that whatsoever. So I rolled the dice here with that. I think there's value for him there. Rudy Ford, I kind of forgot about, to be totally honest. I remember that happening because I remember him being the guy from Green Bay, and he has made some plays and played on special teams. And maybe you're right. Maybe he is the Sam Franklin fill-in, for the time being until he comes back from his injury. So I could see that too. But mine was more of just a roll of the dice and give the guy a shot. Let's see what he's got.
Yeah, fair enough.
And we do have some breaking news. Actually, I wanted to. Pro Football Talk just put this out, and this is interesting.
Uh-oh.
So a potential Brandon Ayuk trade from the 49ers to the Commanders is back in play. So Adam Peters, guy from San Francisco, takes over as the GM in Washington. I know this isn't Panthers news. I get it, but just wanted to throw it out there. We've talked about it on this show a little bit. But Brandon Ayuk, I've been rooting for Pretty Ricky. I mean, I've been supporting that guy. He's working hard and he's kind of taking on the national reporters, which I think is funnier now.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping, he ends up going to Pittsburgh and then he's out of the NFC altogether. But Commanders back in play in the Ayuk sweepstakes. So
I think
something to
I'm
watch
I
here.
think I'm done with Brandon Ayuk, man. Just get it over
Yeah,
with. I'm tired of hearing
I
about it.
agree. I agree. It's annoying at this point. Let's get a deal done for a contract or trade him and let's move on. We're
Yeah.
getting close. But I mean, I can't remember. Can you remember last time where a guy's gotten traded this close to the season like this, where it's just been this? I'm trying to think to the last time this has happened with
Not
like
of
kind
like
of a
his
high
talent
profile.
level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this feels
I can't
like this
remember.
thing is dragging and dragging on. So, all right, back to Carolina here. I think this is a pretty obvious group at this point.
Yeah, if we're different on this one, we might need to ask some
We're the
questions.
same, but Bryson, I want to ask you this because did Dave Canales pull the trigger too quick on the kicker? Because he was the same guy who said that he was going to wait until he couldn't wait no more, which he learned from Pete Carroll, to not, make a hasteful decision right away and go with a guy when you don't have to. And we've seen a couple of the tweets from some of the beat reporters this week. Eddie's missed some kicks in practice. Do
Yeah.
you think he pulled the trigger too quick and giving, not giving Harrison Mevis a longer shot to win this thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's hard to argue that he didn't. I mean, I think just seeing what we saw this past week from Pinheiro missing, I think there was like 2 or 3 days in a row he hit like 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 2 out of 5. I mean, as soon as Mevis is gone, Pinheiro starts missing kicks. I don't think that's a coincidence. So I think you're not wrong to believe that, and I wouldn't have done it myself. I would have kept it like Canales says until the last moment, until he has to absolutely make a decision when those 53-man rosters have to be submitted. But they did it. I don't know their reasoning. I would love to know why, but honestly, this was a room where I was like, if a kicker, like, I don't know how many. I haven't been paying attention to very many other teams' training camps around the league. I'm pretty locked in on the Panthers, so I don't know how many kicking competitions are going on around the league. I know there were some undrafted free agent kickers with other teams, and teams probably drafted kickers, and they already had a starter. If a kicker gets cut that has some potential that's shown in preseason and in training camp, because like I believe it was Canales, or it was either Dan Morgan or Canales said they have dedicated scouts for each team in the league, like to scour it was Dan Morgan to scour their roster and the kind of the back end predicting who they're going to cut and who they would want. Like, I would not be mad moving on from Pinheiro, because I really think he hampers a lot of ability for this offense to score points. I mean, you have to get the ball within a 40-yard range for Pinheiro to have a good shot of making a kick. I mean, 45 and on, you're kind of holding your breath and hoping that the kick goes in. But I wouldn't be mad if they made a decision like that and rolled the dice on a kicker that they've been eyeing for a while in a competition somewhere. So, but this is what they have right now with Pinheiro, Hecker, and Jansen. Of course, Hecker and Jansen are locked in. Two really good players at the position, but I wouldn't be upset if they moved on from Pinheiro and signed somebody off waivers.
Yeah, I'm honestly shocked Mevis hasn't been picked up by anyone.
Yeah.
I just did a quick search just to make sure he hasn't been. And, people I'm seeing people, I'm just looking at tweets, like people have been like, someone needs to go pick up Mevis. Like, there's fans of other teams like, why aren't could have signed Mevis for free. And I think it was a Browns fan a Commanders fan who, the Browns, we just had kicker news today. They traded Cade York to the Commanders. So like, yeah, I'm shocked no one has, rolled the dice with Mevis because of his leg. And I think there's value for some teams that, want to kick beyond 50 and, when they drive down the field and have a shot at 50 and beyond, they're going to shocked they haven't rolled the dice with them, to be honest with you. And maybe, that's not out of the realm because I always say it, you're only as good as your next kick. And confidence is a big thing. And when you start lacking that, you start missing kicks. It gets hairy. And I honestly wouldn't be shocked if that starts happening with Eddie, Carolina pulls the trigger on a guy like that. So should they have probably waited a little bit longer just to see? Yeah. But I mean, we'll see. I just think this whole kicking situation has been awkward from the jump.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always awkward when you have your potential replacement playing with you and you're trying to, working in the locker room with them, but that's at any position. So, I mean, it is what it is, but it just always seemed very awkward with Mevis. He was always off on his own and all these guys are over here. It seemed very weird to me, the way the whole situation was handled. But, Carolina stuck with Eddie. We'll see if it pans out. And, hopefully week 3, we're not griping that he missed a 45-yarder to win the game. So,
Yeah.
But let's talk about the game this weekend because that has been, it's been the talk for a while. Should Carolina play their starters? Why aren't they playing their starters? Why are they resting them? They're 2-15. And, Bryce Young had one of the worst rookie seasons ever as a quarterback. Why haven't we seen this guy play all games? He's in a new system. So we're finally here. Canales said he's hopeful the starters are going to play. They want to get him in for a couple series, get him that pregame warm-up, get him settled in, ready for week 1 against the Saints. So are you excited? Are you ready to see Bryce Young with his Dave Canales offense that we don't want to call vanilla because of the Frank Reich nightmares, but it's going to be pretty vanilla for the preseason? So what do you think of the starters playing in this game against Buffalo?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think I'm going to treat it like it's the damn Super Bowl because I haven't seen Bryce Young in this offense play in a meaningful game in a long time. So yeah, I'm excited to see him. Obviously, they're not going to unveil the whole playbook and open it up and get players involved in a crazy way, but I think that they'll show some things and hopefully try to build Bryce's confidence up going into week 1 versus the Saints, like you said, and see what this offensive line looks like. Running the ball, because we all know Canales is going to run the ball stubbornly. So I'm sure we're going to see quite a bit of runs and hopefully some play actions and some tight end crossers or Deontay Johnson across the middle. I mean, I'm excited to see that and just see this offense like show competency because that's what we failed to show last year throughout almost the whole entire year. It was bad. We all know that. So yeah, I mean, just give us a little glimpse of what we can look forward to. I'm happy that they're playing. I like I've said before, I wouldn't have been upset if they didn't. I understand both sides of the argument. If Bryce Young goes out there and gets injured, God forbid, in a series in the preseason, there's going to be fans saying, "Why was he playing in the preseason?" I mean, it's a lose really for Canales in this situation. But I think getting him out there is important and getting some live reps. And I just hope Iquanu can act like he's been there before and block the guy in front of him and not get Bryce Young killed. I mean, that worries me a little bit, but it'll be cool to see Hubbard back out there again and Deontay Johnson in the offense. It'll be interesting to see if they get him involved or make him the focal point in a preseason game. But yeah, I'm excited. Like I said, I'm going to be might smoke some wings or something, drink some beer, and just treat that thing like it's a real game. I don't know, man. I am excited though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I wanted to see the starters at least once before the season. Mostly the offense because they struggled mightily last year, and I tweeted this today. I want to see Austin Corbett snapping to Bryce Young. I want to see Bryce Young throwing to Leggett. I don't know if Deontay Johnson's going to play. I'd like to see that. I think he's not going to play. I want to see him throwing to Mingo. I want to see him throwing to Adam Thielen. I want to see him throwing to Jatavion Sanders. And then I want to see Chuba running in one of these run schemes that Canales has got dreamed up between some of these new guards we got with Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. Damian Lewis hasn't gotten a lot of reps this training camp. I want to see some of that. I want to see these new guys on offense. I know what the defense is going to have. I know that Coachy on the other side is going to have those guys ready. Evero is going to have that defense ready. I'm not so concerned about that. I want to see what this offense is going to do, and I get it. It's going to be, drawn down a little bit. It's going to be more vanilla, but I want to see those reps, and I think we've all heard, and it's been blown out. Corbett doesn't think this is a big deal. He's ready to roll at center, but I still think seeing that exchange, getting the communication between Canales and Bryce Young, that's important. That's different in a game. That's an entirely different situation. Managing the clock, getting up, huddling, getting to the snap, having time to kind of dissect the defense. That all has to play out, and it's different for everyone. It's a whole different feel. Does Bryce does Bryce have a wrist with the plays on his wrist? Does he get in the calls? I think he's going to get the calls in the head. I don't think he's going to have the play sheet on his wrist like he did with Frank Wright. Remember, that was back and forth last year. Like, that all needs to be sorted out. So I think it's important to get those reps, whether it's a series or two. I hope, the offense puts up some points. I don't want to see them come out a couple 3-and-outs and they're out of there. I mean, they better put up some points. We need to see movement of the ball.
Number 2, so.
Exactly. So it should be a well-oiled machine. Get down there, score, get those guys out of it. If they get down there and score in one series, pull them. We don't need injuries. We don't need to see any of that. Let's keep this rolling. And honestly, if we're looking at it in years, and this is kind of a bigger discussion about preseason games, if all these teams treat preseason as really just a bunch of bullshit and they're playing, their second, third string guys, they need to go to more of, let's do joint practices. It's mandatory. You have to have 2 or 3. Get rid of preseason altogether. I don't think they're ever going to do this, but get rid of preseason altogether. Do joint practices. That way your QBs aren't getting hurt. You're still getting reps against another team. And you're going to extend it to 18 games. NFL wants to make money. It's going to happen. There's no doubt about it. They're going to get to 18. They're going to push it back. Super Bowl is going to be the day before President's Day, so everyone gets off the next day because it's a federal holiday. And they're going to get to that point, but you're going to shrink it down to 2 preseason games, and no starters are going to play most of the time. It's just the way it's set up. Just go to the joint. The Jets, I think they had 3 joint practices with teams. It might have been 2, but I know it was 2. It might have been 3. But like a lot of teams are starting to go to that. Go to the joint practices. You don't need to go. It's less tackling, so you're not the risk of injury is less in those joint practices versus the preseason. Again, this is getting a whole conversation, but it's just like, let's just, preseason become a joke at this point. It really has. And I get it, for the back end, those guys it's good for, but you can also evaluate that in joint practices too. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, I'm glad. I'm curious to see how some of these starters are out there. I don't know who's all going to play starter wise. I don't think we're going to see JC Horn. I don't think we're going to see Shaq Thompson. Maybe we do. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I think some of those veteran guys that have gotten the reps, I don't know if they're really going to be out there, especially JC. Like, I couldn't see that.
I couldn't see Clowney out there. I couldn't see JC. You're right. You're probably right about Deontay. I don't think they risked that, but yeah, I think some of those older.
But Leggett, I think those are. I'm shocked he has, and I get it. He's coming off injury and stuff, but like, I'm shocked he hasn't been out there in preseason too.
Yeah,
with some of it, and I know Bryce isn't out there but those are valuable reps. Like, that's, yeah. We'll see. We'll see this weekend how much action they get, and we all say a prayer that no one gets hurt in this game. And, they come clean and, ready to roll against the Saints week 1. They'll have a week off. But yeah, I'm excited to finally see them. I like your wing idea. I might have to steal that. I'll probably order pizza. I'm too lazy. Order some pizza and get this game underway. But I'm excited. We'll see what happens. And again, we appreciate everyone in the chat. Keep it up. And we're reading some of your guys' stuff throughout here. Mike Hollinger mentions Pinheiro being the highest scorer of the team last year. I mean, that ain't saying much.
That's not
Let's
a
be
good thing.
real.
That's not a good thing.
Yeah, that tells you how shitty this offense was last year. And then Will Robinson 843 says preseason probably used to evaluate talent. I don't disagree with you. I just think teams, it just doesn't seem like it's taken very seriously. I mean, it is for evaluation standpoint, but like you're not getting a lot schematically. How much are teams really, looking at, what they're not really game planning against these teams. It's just let's run out our playbook and see what we got type thing. So I don't know. I think there's value with joint practices and then the whole injury aspect too. So we'll see what shakes out of it. But we just appreciate everyone. We got a big announcement coming next week. We also do have, we're going to have a panel discussion. We're going to do some predictions we did last year. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to do what I did last year. I wasn't as positive as some of these other guys they were last year. But I'm really not going to be positive with some of the things but we'll do like what we did last year with some of the predictions of who we think. So it'll be fun. I'm hoping for about five of us on here. So it should be pretty good. Should be a good discussion. We'll recap the game this past weekend, and then we'll talk about that as we get ready for the Saints week 1. But we appreciate everyone on here. Again, sports betting, sports books, go check it out. Signupexpert.com/Panthers. We would appreciate the support. They're doing some great deals right now on some of those sports books. You can select which area you're in, and it'll tell you the ones available. Just click on the link, sign up through that link, and start betting. We got college football coming up this weekend, Panthers football, so it'll be fun. We just want to thank everyone for tuning in, over 300 plus. We appreciate you all, and keep pounding, and let's get a win this weekend.